you out there fighting the good fight, standing up to Donald Trump, doing what you do best to try and really move our country in the right direction. But we also know that you have a long history in the world of politics during a time where it was difficult for women to even get engaged. Your dad served as mayor of Baltimore. Your brother served as mayor of Baltimore. You, raising 5 kids, ran for office and became a congresswoman for San Francisco. So tell us about those early years and how challenging it was at that time for women, because you were breaking barriers even back then.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. First, I want to congratulate you on the great job that you are doing as mayor of San Francisco. I'm so very, very proud of you, and now it appears your reelection is quite obvious. And as you gain even more standing in our city, and I know our city is your focus, your national example of whether it's public education or affordable housing or issues that relate to gun safety, the list goes on, are stories that you can tell from personal experience. And I want everyone in this room to know that personal stories are the power, I remember when I first met the mayor, she was a staffer at City Hall. She was on a commission. My daughter Christina was here, reminds me she was also an officer of the California Democratic Party Women's Caucus. Christine's here with a Ruth Bader Ginsburg scarf on today. And then you were involved in Emerge, and I know Susie Beal is very much a part of this. Thank you, Susie Beal, for Emerge. But you took all the steps, and now to be the mayor of this great city, to bring your experience and your values. So I hope in the course of our conversation, as I share my story, you'll share another generation's story, your own, and I'm sure you're doing it in the course of this very important meeting. It's wonderful to be in San Francisco on any given day, but to be here with all of these women, these invincible women. Yeah. We have our bracelets. Our invincible women is quite an honor. I have to just tell you, though, it is a curious time in our country, and the time for women to be invincible has never been more important. Even though this year this Congress we will celebrate the 100th anniversary of women having the right to vote. That's a good thing. As we do so, we have over 100 women in the House of Representatives. 91 of them are Democrats. 106, 91 are Democrats. But they represent the beauty, the diversity of America. And when women first got the right to vote, we still had much more work to do to make sure extended to women of color and people of color across our country. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on that subject. When women got the right to vote, the headline said, "Women given the right to vote." No. Women fought, women were starved, women starved themselves, marched, advocated for decades before the right to vote came. And now we have to do some of the same things to, I'll just go to this place. In the course of our revolution, when times were dark, Thomas Paine said, "The times have found us." We believe the times have found us now again to save our democracy, And the role of women in all of that is very, very important. So know your power. It's fabulous to see the strength of it all here, but understand how necessary that is. So I thank you for your leadership, your involvement, your courage to be invincible.
Thank you. Now, 100 years may seem like a long time, but it wasn't that long ago in our history when we basically took the right to vote, and we're celebrating that 100-year anniversary, but we're still, in the midst of a lot of inequities that women face in this country. And I know you have been a leader around equal pay. So tell us a little bit about your work and what you're doing to help address the inequalities and the pay gap for women and men.
Well, I appreciate your asking that, because one of our top items on our agenda when we came in as the new majority in Congress was to pass the Fair Pay Act, equal pay for equal work. And it's still stunning to me to see people voting against that. And Mitch McConnell in the Senate is saying, I'm the Grim Reaper, it's not going to see a vote in the Senate. But I say to him, this may be, you may think it's dead, but it's alive and well in the public. So I appeal to you, because no good thing happens with the outside mobilization. We can maneuver to pass the bill in the House, to get it through the Senate, and the President to sign it is absolutely essential for us to have the outside mobilization. Know your power, weigh in. I mean, who would vote against such a thing? The Republican members of Congress. I know this isn't a partisan effort. But it was amazing to see. And tied to that, which we're going to bring up in a couple of weeks, is raising the minimum wage, the fight for $15 an hour. So that affects women in the workplace as well. But when you think of the fact that women are not paid for the same amount of work as men, and what it means not only to the well-being of their families, but what it means to their pensions and their retirement and the rest. It's so very, very unfair. We can correct it. We've passed the bill. Rosa DeLauro was the author of it. And now we just have to get it past the Senate. We need the... Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. So we need... in order for the public sentiment to weigh in, the public needs to know. So tell a friend, call in, especially into some of you are not from California. Call home, tell those people to call the Republican senators to bring up the bill. It's a threshold we must cross. We must cross.
And that, along with a number of challenges that you have been dealing with for decades in the House of Representatives, you work with a number of presidents, and of course, we had a great time working with President Obama, and we truly miss him now more than ever. Okay. And I just wanted to understand, because we watch you on the news, and in my mind, I don't know about you, but I'm like, how is Nancy Pelosi sitting there with a straight face when some of those things are being said? And I just wonder, well, what is going on in her head? And you, classy as always, try to stay focused on the issue, try to hold him accountable. Madam Speaker, what is going on in your head with all of that?
Well, thank you for bringing up President Obama. And Valerie Jarrett, whom you had this morning, was so spectacular. So spectacular. I love her, and she's really a powerful force in our country. I have to just say this about the occupant of the White House. It's really important to recognize that, again, I'm just stating a fact, this isn't political or partisan, that the Republicans in Congress, House and Senate, by and large, agree with him on almost every subject. I'm not associating them with his behavior, but I am associating them with his policy. So think of any subject. Before he even became president, they were where they were on being anti-women's right to choose, LGBTQ rights, climate change, gun safety, fair immigration, fairness in our economy, diminishing the disparity in income between our the haves and have-nots in our country. They've been on the wrong side of all of those issues for a long time. So his coming in, he's their guy from a policy standpoint. So when we had our election in 2018, I said to the candidates something similar to what I'll say to you now. Don't even mention his name. Just talk about you. And I say this to the women here as you aspire to perhaps running for office or supporting those who do, as we sit here with this magnificent success story of women in politics, our Mayor, London Breed. But here's the thing. What is your why? So I keep saying to the members, we have to distinguish our why. Why are we here? What is our vision for the country? What do we know about the subjects that we can make a difference in the legislation? How do we intend to do this? Are we strategic in our thinking? And show your sincerity, your connection to your constituents in terms of their fears and hopes and apprehensions and aspirations. Don't talk about him. But the fact is that when you present where you are on the issues, you will make a very strong distinction between the Republicans in Congress and the Democrats in Congress. And the Republicans in Congress are very much aligned with the President of the United States on these issues. That's really sad news that I have to convey to you. And so when people say, how come they're not speaking out? Well, he's their guy. He's their guy. But they also have taken an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and we're hoping that that will weigh in on their decisions as we go forward. So when you say when you're sitting there, he's the President of the United States. I respect the office that he holds. I think I respect it more than he respects it, but anyway, I respect the office that he holds. And we have to try to find common ground. Our founders, I went back and said, the times have found us. They also gave us guidance in this respect. E pluribus unum, from many one. They couldn't imagine how many we would be, how different we would be, but they did know that we had to always strive to be one. So for the good of the people, we have to always try to find common ground. Stand our ground, stand ground when we can't. That would be Thomas Jefferson. Stand our ground like a rock where we can't, but try. And so you try to say, well, on infrastructure, building a green infrastructure for the future, a green infrastructure for the future, lowering the cost of prescription drugs. He says he wants to do those things. Let's try to find common ground on that. But at the same time, we must mobilize outside. We would never have passed the Affordable Care Act or saved the Affordable Care Act without the outside mobilization. I thank Janet for her kind words, but it was the outside that made that happen. So again, know your power, be invincible, weigh in on these things, because the public, it is the people's country. We the people, and for the people, and most importantly, for the children. So that's what I think when I'm sitting there, among other things.
Yes. Well, speaking of knowing your power, happens to be the name of the book that you wrote, Know Your Power. And part of knowing your power, of course, is knowing who you are and what you stand for. And I know that this had to come from somewhere. And so tell us, because as I said earlier, you have been doing this incredible work since at a time when there weren't a lot of women who were actively engaged in the political world. And not until recently are we seeing incredible organizations that are coming out, like Emerge and Emily's List and other organizations that are helping to support and encouraging and pushing women to run for office. But you didn't have organizations like that. You stepped out on faith and really got actively engaged. And you also did it while raising 5 kids. I mean, I'm still trying to understand how that's even possible. So tell us a little bit about how you discovered, your voice and your power, and what motivated you in the early years to really step out and to do this type of work.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, but the fact is that I was raised in a political family, as was mentioned. I was raised in a political family, and we were taught that public service is a noble calling, and that we all had a responsibility for the community. We all had a responsibility. It wasn't about politics so much as it was about civic engagement and politics as part of that. And so I never had any intention whatsoever of running for public office, none whatsoever. But I did feel responsible to make some contribution, so I volunteered, and one thing led to another. But I'll just tell you this story about how I went from kitchen to Congress, but one of the paths through it. So I'm at home, I have my 5 kids, run around, little kids, all this, and I get a call from the then mayor, Joseph Alioto. He says, Nancy, what are you doing, making a big pot of pasta? I said, no, Mr. Mayor, I'm reading the New York Times. They used to come in the afternoon in those days before all this technology. And my kids are playing there, and this is after school. And he said, well, I'm calling to ask you to serve on the library commission. Okay? So I say to him, and he said, because I know you love the library, the kids and you all hang out there, Christine. And we go there all the time, help with the books, this or that. This is almost 40 years ago. So I said, no, Mr. Mayor, don't give me that appointment. I love the library. I'll do that. I don't need to be recognized as the library commissioner. And this man, not known as a feminist, but nonetheless said to me, Nancy, you're doing the work, get the official recognition for it. And that was one of the best messages that I had. He said, get there. And of course, no man would have ever said that, right? Don't appoint me, I'll just carry the books around. So I say that to the mayor because her path was through commissions as well, and so many of you here. But that official recognition, lo and behold, I had a vote on the commission. People cared what I thought. We were putting meetings out in the neighborhood. We were doing things differently, and it was empowering. It was empowering, but it was my first official involvement was to be a library commissioner in San Francisco. But that message, he was so clear. As a woman, you especially should receive the official recognition for the work that you're doing. So then one thing and another, I've become chair of the California Democratic Party, this or that. Sala Burton, the congresswoman from this area, takes ill. She insists that I run for Congress. There it is. And there's some steps in between. But then I go to Congress. And I really didn't want to go. I mean, I'd never thought about running for office. I was basically a very shy person. Still am in certain respects. People don't believe that, but anyway. So I go to my daughter, Alexandra, who was the youngest. She was 16, about to go into senior year. It's around January, February, so she would be going in September. And I said, Alexandra, Mom, 4 of them were already in college because these 5 were born almost to the day 6 years. So that's why I like to talk to my colleagues about a woman's right to choose, okay? When you have 5 babies in 6 years, you come talk to me about it, okay? Can you believe these men standing in line to prohibit a woman's right to choose? Come on, don't get me started. So
go ahead, get started.
So I go to Alexandra. I say, Alexandra, Mommy has been invited to run for Congress. It would be better for 1 more year when you were in college, but I love my life, and so if you want me to stay here with you, I'll be gone like 3 nights a week. I mean, I have to even win yet. I don't even know if I'm going to win, but I have to decide whether to run. Any answer is okay. If you want me to stay with you, that's fine, or otherwise. She said, Mother, get a life. And so I had never heard, and we're talking about over 30 years ago, I had never heard the expression before, get a life. What teenage girl wouldn't want her mother going 3 nights a week? So there I went. I got another life. And then when I got there, I never intended to run for leadership, but then people came to me and said, blah, 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 you run for leadership. And when my name was put out there that I'd run for leadership, the men said, who said she could run? Poor babies. Poor babies. So I believe that this was like around 2000. So they said, why don't you just make a list of all the things that the women want and we'll do them for them? Oh, double poor babies. So anyway, one thing and another. But it is a very powerful position. President, Vice President, Speaker of the House, the 3rd highest position in the country. And I stand on the shoulders of so many women. Well, the organizations have emerged since then, I stand on the shoulders of all those suffragettes and all the others who work so hard to open the doors for women. And I understand my responsibility to be shoulders for other women. And we have just this magnificent, our House Democrat. And so I went there. Barbara Boxer and I were the two members from San Francisco. There were 23 women members of Congress, 12 Democrats, 11 Republicans. Now there are 91 Democrats and 15 Republicans. Because we made a decision. We made a decision that we would work to elect many more women, and then organizations like emerged. Emily's List, just remarkable, and other organizations that dedicated to women's right to choose, encouraging women, pro-choice women to run. So now we have this. And I say to the members, our diversity is our strength. This caucus is over 60% women, people of color, LGBTQ. It's so beautifully diverse, over 60%. As I say, our diversity is our strength. Our unity is our power. And that's that power that I bring to the table with the President of the United States.
Yes. So one of the biggest challenges that we're facing as women, of course, is the threat to our reproductive health and what's happening all over the country. It feels like we're going backwards, especially with the laws that are getting passed in places like Georgia and a number of other states in Utah. It is absolutely devastating, and we know ultimately the changes to these policies will mostly impact poor women and women of color, and it has just really had a devastating impact on the morale of, just I think, women in general, because here we are trying to push for pay equity, trying to make sure that, we have a seat at the table and a number of other issues, and now we got to go back and fight a battle that we fought and won in the 1970s. It's like we're going back to the dark ages here, and I just wanted to know your thoughts about what's going on with this and your, suggestion on where do we go from here and how do we continue to push this thing back?
Well, you've said it exactly right. You put it in the frame of pay equity, and this is about respect for women. This whole subject, whether we're talking about respect in the workplace, equal pay for equal work, respect for one's right to choose. I don't want to be, I never like to be fearful. I always like to be hopeful. My hope springs from the fact that so many people understand this threat and are willing to stand up and advocate against this threat to a woman's right to choose. This is a moment, because not only are they passing these bills, which are so harmful, but they are all going into other related fields like embryonic stem cell research, all things that relate to what they think is that at the moment of conception or whatever, life begins. And without going into that, let me just say this to you, because this, for 25 years, my first 25 years in the Congress, I tried to convey this, but it was so unbelievable that people were like, oh, I don't really believe it. If I believed that, I'd never vote Republican. All right. They don't believe in birth control. They don't believe in family planning. They don't believe in any of that. So understand, that's very strange to be telling you that. If you think that their whole goal was to reduce the number of abortions in our country, you think they would love family planning. But what is their bête noire? Their main target in all of this is Planned Parenthood, because they're so effective in giving people choices to make their own choices and have reproductive health initiatives for women all over the country. So until they were defunding Planned Parenthood, which is technically not exactly what they did, but the effect was to defund Planned Parenthood, then people got all aroused about it, and they lost that fight. And now we have to, again, make sure they lose that fight. So women have to speak up in their communities respectfully of their faith-based. You know, look, I'm Italian-American, Baltimore, Maryland, raised in Little Italy in Baltimore, Maryland. Most of my family is not pro-choice. I don't even ask them, and they don't tell, but I have a feeling that that's where they are. I don't think they're crazy about my exuberance on this subject, but I'm very exuberant on the subject because this is fundamental. Believe what you want to believe, live your life, but don't decide that politicians are going to exact that on somebody else. And when we talk about the height of men, when we talk about saying that no funds can be used, that's the wrong thing to do because it's a penalty to diminishes the rights of poorer women. But that's a harder fight. We have to win the election and win the White House to make that fight. But understand that the Hyde Amendment has to go. It has to go. So again, know your power. Advocate for this. Outside mobilization will make all the difference in the world in every state. And if people just decide that they think that a woman doesn't have the good judgment to determine the size and timing of her family, or if she even wants to have one, then they have to pay a price at the polls for thinking that way. But this is fundamental. It's fundamental. And again, women of color pay a price, as you mentioned, and that is the same with Hyde Amendment, same thing with equal pay for equal work, same thing for the minimum wage. I just want to tell a story about Sojourner Truth because we did talk about the suffragettes, and she was just a remarkable, remarkable suffragette. And since you had Valerie here, I feel compelled to tell you this story. So when we took the majority, we decided that we needed to have more diversity in the statues in the capital of the United States, practically all white men. One woman, one or two, Jeanette Rankin, who was the first woman elected to Congress. So we had Rosa Parks. We had a statue of one of the most visited statues in the Capitol now, Rosa Parks, sitting as she. That's the way the community wanted her statue. It's fabulous. But then when we did Rosa Parks, when we did Rosa Parks, President Bush was president. When we did Sojourner Truth, Barack Obama was president. And we had this enormous event in Emancipation Hall in the Capitol, our new facility there. And we were going to display this bust of Sojourner Truth. And our special guest was Michelle Obama. So Michelle Obama gets up and says, and this makes me cry. She gets up and says, talking about Sojourner Truth and how remarkable she was as a slave and mom, a suffragist, advocate to presidents of the United States. She says, I just can see how happy Sojourner Truth would be to see a woman standing there as Speaker of the House. Yeah. But I can't even imagine what she'd be thinking of me, Michelle Obama, as the First Lady of America. We've come a long way. We have much more to do.
Yes, and we have come a long way. And I just want to just touch upon a little bit about just so many of the amazing accomplishments that you have had throughout your career. We know that you spent a lot of your time working to get Democrats elected to Congress, and we truly appreciate that. And it's one of the main reasons why we now finally have, the majority in the House of Representatives because of a lot of your hard work, in addition to a lot of the national policies around health care, pay equity. But you also make sure that you take care of home, and we really appreciate the support that you provided for the Hunters Point shipyard and the cleanup and the accountability in terms of the challenges that we've experienced there. Thank you for your leadership with that, neighborhood preference, and how you helped us and you fought side by side to make sure that people have access to the affordable housing in their neighborhoods. A lot of the great work that we've been able to do and the financial support that we get from the feds, from the Caltrain electrification. I mean, I can go down the list of all the support that you have always provided to San Francisco as you deal with the bigger challenges of the rest of the country. It means so much to have you in this incredible leadership position. And I just want to know what you think because, you know, again, there's so many things. But what really stands out to you as something, a moment in time or a situation or a policy or something that you were just so proud of, and maybe share that with us today?
Well, as I say to my colleagues in the Congress, all the honors you bestow upon me as I was whip, I was leader, Speaker of the House now twice, all of that is wonderful. But nothing is more important to me than stepping onto the floor of the House as the representative of the people of San Francisco. That is the most relevant. And we have a beautiful agenda here that in most cases would be a model to the country, so it makes me easier for me to get resources for what we need to have done here. And it also helps to be Speaker of the House. But I will say that let me just say about San Francisco first. You know, they always, San Francisco values. They had 137,000 ads, the Republicans, against me in the election of 2018 as a San Francisco values person. 137,000 ads, San Francisco liberal. Yes, proud to be. However, it didn't work. We won 40 seats in the most gerrymandered, voter-suppressed arena you can name. And I said, you know what our San Francisco values are? We are the song of St. Francis, our patron saint. Make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there's hatred, we bring love, despair, hope, darkness, light. You all will be sharing in our San Francisco values. But the most a proud moment for me, probably, in addition to representing San Francisco every minute, every day, is the passage of the Affordable Care Act. And when there was a time when people thought it was never going to pass, the press said to me, what are you going to do? Why don't you give up and make it smaller or something? And I said, no, this is our moment. It's Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act. This is our moment of our generation, and we intend to pass the bill. And they said, well, it looks impossible. There's so many barriers to it. And I said, well, if we see a barrier, a fence too high for us, we'll go push open the gate. Yes. And if the gate doesn't open, we'll climb the fence. And if that doesn't work, we'll pole vault in. And if that doesn't work, we'll parachute in. But we're not letting every barrier stand in the way of passing the Affordable Care Act. So after it happened, and I know where time is up, after it happened, the press said, well, which one did you do? And I said, well, actually, we pushed open the gate because we not only had the votes of the House Democrats to do that, but we had the outside mobilization. And I come back to you. The outside, the people who cared, whether it was for all of the things, pre-existing conditions as a benefit, removing lifetime limits, being a woman no longer a pre-existing medical condition, protecting a woman's right to choose, all of those things, your child staying on your policy, the list goes on. But everybody was there pushing open that gate with us. It would not have happened without the outside mobilization. So I tell you that example because it is true for everything that we do. And I always say, particular, thank God for the nuns, as opposed to the bishops, to the nuns who were so helpful to us, another element of women power. So I say to all of you women, know your power. The best advice I ever got running for office is be yourself. Don't let anyone diminish who you are and what you bring to the table. And they'll try to do that, but you don't let them do it. You know why? Because you're invincible.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Thank you.
the most powerful woman in San Francisco and the most powerful